Now, I'll give you the honest rundown. It won't be full of specs and stuff, even though I do know a few specs on the bike, but try my best to give you guys a bit of a review on the bike, what I felt riding it. I haven't ridden a lot of the previous generations of the bike, or to be fair, I haven't ridden any WR450s in the past, but I have spent some time riding KTM 500 EXCs, 350 EXCs, and then Yamaha 250 4-stroke motocross bike, 450 motocross bike, and grabbed this WR450 the other day and took it for a bit of a spin out here at Dirt World Pukemara, which is about 15 minutes south of Rotorua, and a bit of single track, bit of trail, bit of moto, and it was pretty fun. The initial thoughts of the bike, being a 450, I'm usually not a massive 450 guy, but I found the power super smooth. To ride it didn't hit that hard as I was expecting. I've ridden the motocross YZ450 and that hits pretty hard, almost too hard for my liking, but I found the WR was actually pretty smooth in its acceleration, and I do believe 24 was the update of this platform, so 24 and 25 are exactly the same. So I know when they did update this platform in 25, they really worked on the ECU in that lower RPM stuff to give it a smoother ride, and then when it goes from mid to high RPM, that it sort of comes on, I guess, nice instead of just being super rapid like the motocross bike. So yeah, in terms of power delivery, I thought it was super rideable, I guess you'd say. It was really rideable for a 450. Didn't rip your arms off, and you always sort of felt in control, never sort of had any whiskey moments. I do have a few of those, but didn't have any on this bike, so that was pretty good. From like a chassis point of view, I'm no expert rider or anything, but this is obviously just what I think. It felt pretty nice to ride. I felt like I didn't get that 450 where you get quite a bit of push into corners quite often. I found that with this WR, I didn't really get that 450 pushing into corners. Sometimes you get it a lot with that engine inertia. It'll push into a corner on a 450, but I felt like the WR, I'm not sure why or how it does it, but you don't sort of get that roll on, so it's sort of easier to pull up with the brakes, which is pretty nice. And I know they did make the frame ever so slightly, and I believe the engine, the way it's mounted in the frame and stuff, it is sitting ever so slightly lower than the previous generations, which they did obviously to improve the turning of the motorcycle, especially at low speed. So when I did ride single track, it was pretty nice in the single track, like in terms of real slow speed stuff in the tighter sections for a 450. I still find, like personally, a 450 is quite a lot. If the tracks are super tight, a 450 is still almost too much for me in those single track and tight single track stuff. I'd prefer to sort of be on a 250 or maybe a 350 KTM or something like that. But it's still nice in the single track, just when it gets super tight. It's just a 450 thing. I think it wouldn't matter if you were on a WR, if you're a CRF 450 RX or KTM 500 or something like that. It's when you're in that tight single track, you still got a lot of engine there that you're trying to pull up, and there's a lot of grunt there when you're snapping on the throttle again. So it is sort of hard when you are in tighter single track stuff to ride these bikes through that. Obviously the pros do an amazing job of riding it in that tighter stuff. I've ridden a couple of Yamahas in the past, that previous generation, that 21, 22, and I did always find them a bit wider through the tank sort of style through here, but they have changed for 24, 25, obviously they have changed the airbox design, and it is 50mm narrower through there, and I actually did notice that quite a bit. I found it a lot slimmer through there, especially cornering with your foot out and stuff like that. It was a lot narrower, and I felt a little bit more, it was a little bit more of a natural feeling, I guess you'd say. For me, after riding a lot of KTM stuff, it was more natural to feel. In the past, I felt like Yamaha, your sort of legs when you're cornering sort of stuck out a little bit more like that, whereas now with this new platform, which obviously they have on the motocross bikes as well, your legs are sort of tucked in a little bit more, so it's a little bit easier to tip in and corner, and you almost feel like you're connected a little bit more with the bike. The seat, they have made a little bit flatter than kind of in previous years. I do find the seat super slippery, the stock seat cover. I don't know what it is about it, but I do find it super slippery. I would definitely, if I was riding this bike full time, want to put a gripper seat cover on it, but it's more than comfortable enough to sit on and ride and stuff like that. I just find it a little bit slippery in terms of movement around on the bike, and sitting down I sort of slide back a little bit more than I would probably like, which is all good. The weight of the bike, it's a 450 they always feel, and being a WR one, it has obviously all the electronics and stuff, which does mean it does allow you in New Zealand here to be able to use it as a dual purpose adventure bike, I guess you could say. So you can put this bike on the road in New Zealand. So the weight of these is always a little bit up there compared to most of the other, I guess, enduro bikes or cross-country bikes, etc. But they did change a lot of stuff in the engine into that 24-25 platform, and I think it's about 1.1 kg lighter. I can't really comment how that feels compared to the previous years, because obviously I haven't sort of ridden the previous year's WR. So yeah, no, it's pretty cool. Suspension I actually thought was firmer than I was expecting. Coming off riding EXC 350, EXC 500s, the suspension is very sort of plush on those, which I do sort of like that feeling. But riding this WR450, the suspension, I feel like it actually holds up really, really well, especially in the if you take it to like a motocross track, start doing some jumps and all that sort of stuff. I found the WR, like the 450, the suspension, I actually didn't have a problem with it doing jumps. Or normally on an enduro bike you'd be maybe a little bit more careful, or you have to be quite precise, otherwise you run the risk of bottoming out, or when you're sort of going up the up ramps or jumps and stuff, you sort of blow through a lot with soft suspension on the enduro bikes. But this I actually felt like it was definitely a little bit more firmer than I thought it was going to be. I wouldn't say it's too firm for me, but firmer than the other enduro bikes that I would compare it to, like your KTM 350, 500, etc. Which is good, especially if you want to do single track stuff, a little bit of motocross stuff, and obviously a bit of cross country. I haven't sort of ridden it at super high speeds along super rough ground, so I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly how it handled along that sort of stuff, but the small bumps and the small sort of bumps you get, it handles pretty well on the tracks, I guess you could say. Couple other things, I guess. The WR450, you obviously have the 18-inch rear wheel. You got the side stand on there. You got a 6-speed gearbox, wide ratio gearbox, which is super smooth. For me, in super tight single track stuff, I would probably run a tooth lower in the front sprocket, because I sort of go between first and second gear a lot, whereas I would rather just stay in second gear the whole time and then ride all the single track stuff in second gear. I'm not a big fan of knocking down into first, because I find first quite like jerky sometimes, especially on a 450 with so much power. So I would probably go one tooth lower on the front sprocket, or go maybe 2 teeth up on the rear sprocket, and then that way I could carry second and even a bit third a little bit cleaner in a lot of the single track sort of tighter stuff, which is good. In New Zealand here, the WR450 retails for $17,699, the 2025 model, and they've actually been selling pretty good out of Bradley's and Rotorua, which obviously I'm stoked with. A couple of things, they have the bash plate on them from standard, and obviously they come with the headlight, they come with the road kit. Like I said, you can register them in New Zealand. It's actually a LAMS approved bike when it's in its sort of road format. It is a LAMS approved adventure bike, so it is. Couldn't say, I obviously haven't ridden one on the road, so I can't comment on how it feels on the road and that adventure sort of style of riding. Obviously only ridden it here at Dirt World and a couple of other trail rides here in New Zealand, so I can only comment on how it handles on the dirt and the off-road. I'd imagine as a dual sport bike, it would be awesome to drive somewhere, hop off and then go exploring, come back and chuck it on the trailer and drive to your next location. It's not really a bike, I would imagine, that you'd be spending 2 hours on the highway and then pulling off and doing a bit and then another 2 hours on the highway to get to your next destination. I think it would sort of be, I don't know, a bit boring. I mean, I'd find it a little bit boring to do something like that. I'd rather trailer it somewhere, do plenty of exploring in that area, and then chuck it back on the trailer, drive to the next location. You know, you don't really need to do those Ks on the road if you can help it. What else? WR450 comes with Dunlop Gearbox as standard, which are a good tyre. They're sort of road legal knobbies on them from standard, so obviously you can beef them up a little bit. Comes with obviously the indicator kit and stuff to go on the road, and yeah, I think that's about it really for the bike review. That's all I got to say really.